Job history. Because of system limits, this horror story is shorter than the character range you requested, but I have followed all your other constraints as closely as possible. The copy room always smelled the same to him, like hot dust and old plastic and the faint bite of toner. It sat at the back of the second floor, past the break room with the rattling fridge and the framed motivational posters no one read anymore. In the evenings, the main office thinned out, then emptied, until it was just him, the hum of the climate system, and the low, steady whir from the big machine in the corner. Mark liked that part of the day. He could move slower. He could line up the next morning's packets and reports, run off new hire packets, collate the safety binders. There was a rhythm to it, the thump of the mechanism, the slide of paper, the sharp little click when the finisher stapled a corner. The machine's screen glowed a soft blue when he woke it with a thumb on the panel. It greeted him with the same bland menu. Copies, scan, fax, even though they did not use fax anymore. That night, the screen did not wake the way it should. He tapped it with the edge of his badge, then with his knuckle. The rest of the room felt thick and stale, as if the air had been still for days. The hallway beyond the door was dark, except for the green exit sign over the stairwell. When the panel finally came alive, it did not show his usual menu. The line at the top blinked in pale letters he did not recognize at first. Unknown job, unknown user. Under that, in smaller type, a timestamp he did not remember setting. A little after 3 in the morning. The current time, when he checked his phone, was a little before 10 at night. His first thought was that the machine had a held job from some other department. Sometimes people sent big print jobs and forgot them, then called in to ask if he had seen a packet. He hit the job status button. The machine refused. The regular chime did not sound. Instead, there was a faint internal click, like a pen being uncapped. The lid lifted by itself, just a sliver, then settled again. Mark stared at it. The automatic feeder on top was empty. He had cleared it after copying invoices. The glass platen was bare. There were no originals in the tray. The machine pulled a sheet of paper from the lower drawer anyway. He heard the familiar draw and feed, the soft rush as the sheet slid under the drum. The page came out warm and smooth, curling at the edge as it landed in the output tray. He did not pick it up right away. He watched another blank sheet feed into the path, listened to the soft drag and whir. Another page landed. Only when the machine paused did he reach for the first one. His name sat in the lower right corner on a small visitor sticker, the kind the front desk printed for Tom and vendors. The adhesive label was blank except for his name and a single word under it. Return. The font was wrong. The old serif style they had phased out years before when they changed logos and ordered new signage. The sticker background was a washed-out cream, not the bright white they used now. He ran a thumb over it. The edge of the sticker tugged free with the sound of skin on glue. He checked the top of the page. No letterhead, no text, just that sticker. The second page showed a map of the building. He recognized the outline of the lobby with its rotating door, the long corridor of cubicles, the break room square. Emergency exits glowed in pale blocks. Someone had drawn a hallway along the rear wall that did not exist, a narrow spur that ran away from the copy room and ended in a small square. A door symbol sat there, just a line and a wedge where the door would swing. He knew that stretch of wall. Cinder block painted off white, no door, no seam, nothing but an old corkboard with a faded evacuation poster. The machine fed another sheet while he stared. When he looked up, the new page had already slid into place at the top of the stack. It showed his company badge, complete with the crooked photo of him taken on his first day, but mirrored, as if someone had pressed it face down and scanned it from the wrong side. The small notch in the plastic, where the clip grabbed, was on the left in the picture. He wore his badge on the right side of his chest, always had. Behind him, the stapler on the machine clacked once. It stapled nothing. The sound was sharp in the room, an empty metal bite. Mark put his hand on the lid and lifted. The platen glass was clean and cool under his fingers. No papers, no smudges. A faint oval of mist bloomed and faded on the underside of the lid, as if someone had breathed there. The ghost of a breath, there and gone. The machine whirred again and pushed out one more sheet. Fingerprints in gray toner spiraled across the page, enlarged to fill the paper, each ridge and loop in high contrast. He saw the small crescent nick from where he had cut his thumb on a tape gun months before. The pattern was familiar in a way that made his shoulders tighten. He hit the cancel key. The panel stayed where it was and added a line he did not remember seeing before. Collate. The little green light beside the finisher module came on. The pages in the output tray shivered. The machine sucked them back, aligning edges, humming low. It sorted them by some order he had not given it. Map, visitor sticker, door, badge. A last sheet came out after them, heavier stock, with nothing at the top except a single phrase tucked where the confidentiality stamp usually lived. Do not greet. The hallway lights beyond the copy room door clicked once. A relay somewhere in the ceiling snapped and echoed. The sound made the hairs on his arms lift. It felt for a second like the building itself had paused, like a person listening. The machine waited. His phone buzzed on the counter where he had set it. The vibration slid it an inch toward the edge. When he picked it up, there was no call, no message. Just a cleared screen and his own reflection looking back, tired eyes, and the deep crease between his brows. Another slip of paper slid out from the bypass tray without any input from him. A small strip, as if someone had cut a sheet down into a narrow ticket. It carried 3 words in the same old serif font they had used before the rebrand. Hold the door. He stood there with that little stack of papers, warm in his hand, and the sense that the room had nudged closer around him. The machine's fan ran on, blowing tepid air at his sleeve. The screen dimmed back to its resting menu, as if the strange job had never existed. He walked out with the stack against his palm. The visitor sticker curled slightly at the edge. In the corridor, the overhead bulbs buzzed at a low pitch, each ballast to its own rhythm. He moved past the break room and the framed posters and stopped at the cinderblock wall where the map had shown the hallway. The old evacuation chart hung slightly crooked. He straightened it, then pressed his knuckles against the block beside it. Cool, solid, no seam, no hollow knock. Still, when he went home that night, the map sat in his bag along with the badge image and the warning about greeting. The little strip about the door rode in his pocket. He did not sleep well. The hum of his neighbor's air conditioner through the thin apartment wall kept drifting into his dreams as the steady whir of the office copier, spitting out blank pages into an empty room. He woke around dawn with the shape of a hallway in his mind, narrow and windowless, lit by a single buzzing line of panels overhead. He told himself it was a malfunction, some cached job, a glitch in the print server. First thing in the morning, he would log a ticket with IT. Systems did strange things sometimes. Machines woke themselves, updated themselves, reconfigured menus. He stared at the visitor sticker on his bedside table until the light through the blinds shifted from gray to a pale, weak yellow. In the morning, with people around and the air filled with voices and keyboard taps and ringing phones, the whole thing seemed smaller. He took his stack of papers down to the small window in the basement, where a tech named Ron handled hardware issues and tried to make a joke of it. Ron flipped through the pages slowly, lips pressed together. The little office smelled like coffee grounds and the faint sour of an old rug. Towers and monitors sat stacked along the back wall. Looks like some test pattern, Ron said. Somebody playing around. I can pull the logs if you want. Mark watched him slide the stack aside. The warning line about not greeting ended up face down. The small ticket about the door slid halfway under the keyboard. "You think somebody remote printed it?" Mark asked. "Maybe," Ron shrugged. "There's that regional support group that can tunnel in. Or somebody in another branch picked the wrong machine." His tone was flat, unbothered. "I'll check." Probably nothing. The words "probably nothing" settled somewhere in Mark's chest and sat there like a pebble. The day moved on. Meetings, emails, a new training module about confidentiality. He routed the packets, sent reminders, answered a question about the vendor list. By the time the office emptied again, he felt foolish for even mentioning it. Machines glitched. Printers ran jobs at odd hours. He had worked there long enough to know that nothing ever truly fixed so much as shuffled. Still, when he stood in the copy room that night, with the door propped open and the hum of the machine filling the small space, he could not stop glancing at the display. It showed the usual home screen. Copies. Scan. He told himself he would give it one night. If nothing strange happened, he would forget about it. Chalk it up to a bad mix of overtime and too much vending machine coffee. Around the time the cleaning crews finished the first floor, he heard the soft clunk of the building's main doors being locked by security. A few people remained up in accounting, their laughs drifting down the hall and dimming as they left in ones and twos. Their footsteps faded down the stairwell. The overheads hummed. At some point, the elevator stopped running and stayed parked. The red number over the doors went dark. After that, it was mostly just he and the machine, and whichever guard did the rounds that night. He was aligning a stack of sales reports on the finishing table, and the panel flashed again. Unknown job. Unknown user. The timestamp at the bottom was the same, a little after 3 in the morning, even though it was nowhere near that. He had not sent anything. No one had. He had checked the queue earlier. It had been empty. Paper slid from the lower tray. He watched the feed this time, hands flat on the table, jaw tight. The machine pulled a single sheet. The rollers squeaked in the way they did when the air was dry. The page emerged with a faint line near one edge, as if a scanner lamp had flickered. The map again. The same hallway along the back wall. This time, a thin gray line extended from the end of the corridor square, not quite touching the symbol for the door. It looked like the beginning of an arrow, or a finger pointing. The machine printed a second page before he could hit any button. The new sheet showed the copy room itself, a schematic outline with rectangles for cabinets, and the machine, the narrow table for collated stacks. A dotted line ran from the machine to the wall with the evacuation poster. He stepped backward until his heel met the doorframe. The room felt smaller all at once. He reached for the cancel key. His finger hovered. The button did not light. The machine pushed out a third sheet. This one carried only text. The letters were crisp and dark. Do not greet. The words landed with more weight than they should have. He could feel them in his wrist bones, where his hand rested on the table. Outside in the hallway, something clicked, then clicked again. Not the relay this time, but the hollow sound of a latch trying and failing. The nearest stairwell door rattled in its frame, just once, and went still. "Mark?" a voice called, muffled through the wall. He froze. The voice was low, neither male nor female, in a clear way, as if heard through an intercom. It carried his name the way someone might carry a package. Careful, with intent. He did not answer. The copier fan spun up, then down. The image of his badge stared back at him from the top sheet of the older stack on the side table, mirrored and wrong. The voice did not repeat. The hallway eased back into its usual quiet. A minute later, he heard the distant roll of the guard's cart and the squeak of wheels on the tiles. He took the new pages with him when he left. On the drive home, he kept checking his mirrors, half expecting to see another car sliding into his blind spot with its headlights off. The night outside the windshield was thin and pale, the kind of sky that made it hard to tell how late it really was. Over the next few days, the machine behaved. It woke when he touched it, processed boring jobs, spit out forms and agendas, and copies of contracts. Ron never got back to him about the logs. Work shifted around some minor corporate announcement about restructuring, the kind of change that reshuffled reporting lines but left his desk and punch list the same. Even so, the copy room felt different to him now. The hum behind the walls came through louder on some evenings. The air near the evacuation poster felt a shade cooler, as if a draft ran along the block. The overhead fixture nearest the door started to flicker once in a while, a brief dip that made the room darker for a breath. He told himself the building was old. The firm had bought it from a shuttered manufacturing plant. There were likely ducts and conduits behind that rear wall, maybe even an unused crawl space. He told himself the maps were a joke, some misplaced file from an ancient version of the floor plan. It had probably been sitting on a server for years. He tried not to think about the visitor sticker with his name in the old font, or how the word under it had read like an instruction rather than a label: return. At home, he started sleeping with a small lamp on in the living room, just a soft pool of light, so the entire apartment was not dark when he woke up at odd hours. He told himself it was for convenience, so he would not stub his toe on the coffee table. The truth was that he had begun to dream of hallways again, and in those dreams, the door at the end never opened completely. Something waited just behind it, pressed close, patient. He did not tell anyone about that. It was a week later when the advisory went out. The message came from building management and went to every employee inbox. It carried a bland subject line about safety and after-hours access. Inside, the tone was polite but firm. Keep doors closed. Do not let unknown visitors into secured areas. All entry after a certain hour must go through the main lobby with the guard present. Do not prop stairwell doors. Do not hold exterior doors open for people whose badges you do not recognize. He read it twice, then looked over at his bag. The curled ticket with the instruction about the door still rode in the side pocket. Hold the door. He deleted the email and pulled it back out of the trash, just in case there was something in it he had missed. The wording was plain. There had been an incident at another property. Out of an abundance of caution, this building was tightening its rules. That was all. In the days that followed, the guards started following a new route. The security badge readers near the rear exits beeped with a sharper tone, as if some software had changed. One of the older guards, a woman with a soft voice and a gray braid down her back, reminded him one evening to make sure the stairwell door latched behind him. People get careless, she said. You never know who's watching for a chance. He nodded and promised to be careful. He did not mention the machine. The next time the unknown job appeared, he almost missed it. He was tired, moving on autopilot, stacking a run of training binders. The routine acted like a soft curtain over his thoughts. Pick up a set, tap the edges straight, place it on the cart, repeat. The copy room lights buzzed overhead like a hive. Only when the machine primed its rollers and tugged a blank sheet did he look up. The panel had already shifted to the other menu. Unknown job, unknown user. The timestamp glowed the same pale shade, a little after 3 in the morning. His phone in his pocket told a different time when he checked. Early evening, not even truly dark outside yet. The first page showed the hallway again, this time from a different angle. The walls were bare. No evacuation poster, no framed anything. Just painted block and a floor that reflected the overhead fixtures in stretched ovals. At the far end, the door shape stood open a few inches. Everything beyond that thin crack was black. He told his hand to hit cancel. Instead, it reached for the edge of the page. The second sheet came with a faint smell of toner stronger than usual, a metallic tang under the usual dust. It was a picture of his own hand, but not the one he would see if he laid it flat and looked down. The thumb rested along the white of the paper, as if someone had pressed it there and scanned it. But the wrist angle was wrong, the fingers stretching in the opposite direction, like a reflection in a mirror that did not quite understand depth. The third page carried text again. Do not greet. This time, a line of smaller print beneath the warning said something new. Do not greet what you cannot see. His mouth went dry. His tongue felt thick in it. He swallowed and heard it, the sound too loud in the small room. The building was quieter than usual that night. A storm was rolling in, big enough that people had left early to beat the rain. The windows on the far side of the floor showed nothing now, just black glass with the faint ghost of interior lights. In the hallway, just beyond the copy room, the air seemed to shift. He felt it before he heard it, a sense of pressure moving along the corridor, like a wave pushing ahead of a train in a tunnel. The stairwell door latch clicked, once, twice, a slow, deliberate pattern. Mark, the muffled voice called again. It sounded closer this time, as if whoever it was had their mouth right against the seam in the door. He did not answer. His hand went to his badge. The plastic was worn from his chest. The copier's lamp flicked on behind the glass. No job ran. The light just sat there, a pale bar under the lid, humming faintly. He pictured the extra hallway in his mind, the one with the open door at the far end. In that picture, the walls felt closer, the air heavy and flat. He wondered who had drawn it. He wondered when. The stairwell door knob turned without opening, a slow turn forward and back. A soft scraping sound followed, like cloth on metal. Please hold the door, the voice said. The words came muffled but distinct. His throat tightened. The ticket in his pocket seemed to heat against his leg, the small rectangle pressing into his skin as if it were trying to brand there. Hold the door. He took a step toward the hallway. The panel on the machine flashed and pushed another sheet out. This one held a single line of text. Do not greet, do not hold. The feed tray shuddered. A mechanical clunk sounded from deep inside, as if something had locked in place. He stopped in the doorway of the copy room and looked down the hall toward the stairwell. The door there was closed. There was no shadow under it, no line of light, just the painted steel slab and the gray metal frame. He could feel someone on the other side. Not see, not hear now, but feel. A pressure, the way a crowded subway car feels when you are outside looking at it, full of people pressed just beyond the glass. The building was still. Somewhere far off, the compressor for the roof unit kicked on, a low rumble that filtered through the ducts. The fluorescent fixture outside the copy room door buzzed a little louder, then quieter, like breath. He thought about the safety emails, the new rules about access. He thought about the warning on the printed page. He thought about Ron in his basement office shrugging over logs. His hand rose, almost of its own accord, and closed around the copy room door handle instead of the stairwells. He eased it mostly shut, leaving just enough of a gap for him to see the hall. The air that slid through that narrow space felt cooler on his knuckles. The stairwell knob turned again. This time he heard the hinges creak. Not a full swing, just a test, a slight shift, as if someone on the other side had leaned their weight into it. He backed away until his shoulder met the side of the machine. The copier vibrated faintly, a steady, small tremor. The panel showed his usual home screen again, no sign of the warning text. The unknown job line had vanished. He spent the rest of the night in a kind of narrowed focus, moving through tasks mechanically. Every time he stepped into the hall, he kept his eyes on the stairwell door and listened for any scrape or knock. Nothing else happened. No more strange print jobs. No more muffled voice. When he left for the night, he walked past the guard desk in the lobby. A different guard sat there, a younger man with a shaved head and a crossword folded beside his elbow. The main doors loomed behind him as dark rectangles in the glass. "Quiet night?" Mark asked. The guard looked up from his phone. "So far," he said. "Storm's supposed to hit closer to dawn." "You see anybody wandering around up there?" "Like who?" Mark kept his tone mild. "Just asking." The guard shrugged. "Got a weird alert earlier. One of the stairwell doors tried to cycle after lock. Could be a misread." He nodded at his monitor, where a list of door names and green icons filled the screen. Could be nothing. Probably nothing. On the drive home, rain began to tap the windshield. Wipers beat a steady rhythm. In that metronome noise, he heard the machine's feedback in his mind, the drawn sheets, the odd faint knock of a stapler closing on air. He did not sleep much at all. The next day, he tried again with Ron. The tech had his feet up on a second chair, eyes half closed, headphones in. When Mark stepped up to the small half door of the window, he pulled one ear free. "The logs," Mark said, "on the copier. Did you ever check them?" Ron frowned. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Weird thing. Got a bunch of timestamps with no user badge tied to them. Looks like some kind of ghost job. Could be a misconfigured service. I've got a ticket in with the vendor." "What times?" Mark asked. Ron squinted at his monitor and clicked through a few screens. "Early mornings," he said. "Around 3. He glanced up. "Why?" "No reason," Mark said. "Just curious." Ron studied him for a second, then shrugged. "If it happens again," he said, "take down the exact time and let me know. We'll match it with the logs." Mark nodded and went back upstairs. He did not say that the times were already printed in a pale font that seemed to know exactly when the machine would run. By the middle of the week, his appetite had thinned. Coffee sat heavy in his stomach. He found himself standing at the window near the break room more often, looking down at the parking lot as the sun slid away and the lot lights blinked on one by one. Cars left, easing between the painted lines, red brake lights winking. He stayed later than he needed to some nights, waiting to see if the machine would act up again. Other nights, he left early, as if outrunning something at his back. None of it helped. The sense of something building did not depend on the hour he chose. The next event did not come with the unknown job banner. It started with the building map. He was copying a set of invoices when the machine grabbed an extra sheet from the tray without being told. It slid out with the others, nearly lost between vendor logos and line items. He caught the difference only because the paper felt slightly thicker under his thumb. He pulled it free and laid it on the table. The same map, the same back hallway that did not exist. Only now, another element had appeared. A small circle marked the copy room. A line ran from it down the added corridor to the door at the end. Along that line, at uneven intervals, tiny ticks had been drawn, as if marking footsteps. He counted them before he could stop himself. Not out loud, just tracing them with his eyes. The tally made him swallow. He shoved the map into his folder and finished the invoices. The overhead fixture in the hall chose that moment to flicker and stayed dimmer than it had before. The air in the corridor cooled. His breath fogged for a second when he stepped out, then cleared. Later that night, when the badge reader at the end of the hall chirped its little tone as he passed, it sounded more like a warning than a welcome. He took to wearing his badge clipped higher, closer to his shoulder. It was a small thing, but the mirrored image on the page had lodged in his head. The idea of his own credentials being reversed, pressed from some other side, made him uneasy. On a Thursday, the building lost power just before closing. A storm system had rolled in all day. The air carried a charge you could feel on your forearms. Rain rattled on the windows in sudden bursts. Around late afternoon, right when people were trying to wrap up, the lights blinked and went out. A few screens stayed on, riding on the backup unit. The rest of the floor fell into a blue half-dark. Emergency lights came up along the corridors. Small rectangles over doorways glowed a dull red. A copier in the back room fell silent, its panel dark. People cursed softly and collected their things. Phones made small islands of light as they checked messages and weather updates. Management sent an email saying everyone could leave early. That part cheered some of them. Mark stayed. The combination of storm and mechanical silence left him feeling raw and unsettled. The emergency lights gave the halls a different shape. Shadows pooled in corners they usually washed out. The color of the walls changed without the overhead fluorescents to flatten them. He told himself he would wait for the power to come back, run the main jobs, go home as usual. Routine felt important. Routine was a kind of line you could follow through the dark. The building emptied faster than usual. Even the guards seemed scarce, busy checking the basement or the generators. The rain drummed on the roof, steady and hard. In the copy room, without the machine's hum, he could hear sounds he never usually noticed. The tick of pipes in the wall, the faint scratch of something in the vents, a slow creak as the building settled under the change in pressure. He stood at the door and looked down the corridor. Emergency lights glowed at distant intervals, leaving long stretches of shadow between them. The stairwell door at the far end was a blot of deeper dark. Somewhere below, a generator coughed to life. The overheads blinked. The machine in the copy room beeped. He turned back as the panel came on again by itself, skipping the vendor splash screen, jumping straight to a view he had not seen before. No menu, no copy options. Just a clean white background and one line of text. Unknown user. Awaiting job. He did not touch it. The rain hit the windows in waves. The building made a low groaning sound as the systems resumed. A single sheet fed from the bypass tray. He had not loaded that tray. It was empty when the power went out. He watched, numb, as the sheet traveled the path. The toner unit hummed once. The page slid into the output bin. No image, no map. A single sentence only in the old serif font. When the time comes, do not greet, do not hold, do not return. He picked it up with hands that did not feel entirely under his control and read it 3 times. The phrase "when the time comes" sat there like a date that had not yet been written. Behind him, the hallway's emergency lights flickered, then steadied. He put all the new pages into a manila folder and locked it in his bottom desk drawer before he went home. Locking it did not help. The pages lived in his head now. The map, the ticks along the corridor, the tiny square door that might or might not exist. The time came on a night that did not feel special at first. He had eaten badly, something heavy from a drive-through on the way in. It sat in his stomach like a stone. The air in the building felt stale, recirculated too many times. A memo about further restructuring had gone out that morning. Everyone was edgy. Some desks had been cleared already, a few chairs left pushed awkwardly under them. He did his job. Copies, packets, training modules. The machine performed without comment. Hours slid by. The sun went down, hard and fast, the way it sometimes did when clouds covered the last of the light. Sometime deep into the evening, as he was lining up a stack of orientation forms, his phone buzzed once in his pocket with a soft, aborted vibration. No call appeared on the screen, no message. Just the faint tremor against his leg. He looked up. The panel on the machine had gone white again. Unknown user. Job in progress. He had not loaded anything. The feeder was empty. There were no documents on the gloss. The machine's lamp slid once along the platen anyway, bathing the undersurface of the lid in greenish light. The mechanism sounded different now, slower, each component moving as if through thicker air. The first page came out and lay on the output tray with a sound like someone placing their hand carefully on a table. The building map. Again. Only now, along the hallway that did not exist, The tiny ticks had multiplied and thickened. They ran in both directions, overlapping, a tangle of marks that could no longer be counted easily. The small circle denoting the copy room glowed darker than the rest of the ink, as if printed twice. The second page showed the hallway from within, the walls on either side, the floor, the ceiling panels. At the far end, the door stood open wider than before. The darkness beyond it had a texture now, a faint grain, like fabric held just beyond the reach of light. The third page held text, the same phrase, the same warning line: do not greet. Do not greet what you cannot see. The machine was not done. A fourth page emerged. The image there stole the breath from his chest. It was the copy room itself, but taken from an angle no camera he knew could access. High, near the ceiling, looking down. He saw the top of the machine, the table, the trash can, the door. He saw himself standing in the doorway, hand on the frame, head turned toward the hall. He was wearing the clothes he had on at that moment. Same shirt, same worn belt, same bend to the shoulders. He looked from the page to the doorway and back again. The perspective on the paper showed a sliver of something in the hall just outside, a shape like a shoulder or a bent arm, blurred as if the photographer had moved. Behind him, the air shifted again. A cool wash slid along the floor at his heels. The stairwell door down the hall opened with a soft, discreet sound. Not a kick or a slam, just a measured swing. Its latch clicked once against the frame. He stepped away from the machine. The lights in the corridor dimmed without fully going out. The line of fixtures seemed to recede, as if the ceiling had grown higher. Emergency rectangles over the doors glowed dull and red. Footsteps moved in the stairwell. Not the stomp of boots, not the clatter of heels. A slow, even tread, each step placed with care. His heart beat hard enough that he could feel it in his throat. He could walk out right then. He knew that. He could head down the opposite stairs, go to the lobby, nod at the guard, go home, call in sick the next day, never set foot near the copy room again. That road unfurled in his mind in a clear line. The machine's fan blew warm air at his hand. The panel flashed a line of text, awaiting greeting. The word greeting looked wrong there, out of place on a device menu, as if the machine were waiting for a person rather than a job. The footsteps reached the landing just outside the copy room hallway. They paused there. The air thickened. The smell of rain drifted in, but he had not heard any door open to the outside. "Mark," the voice said, closer now than it had ever been, right on the other side of the bend in the hall. The sound carried his name lightly, as if testing it. His skin crawled. Something in him recognized that tone, even though he had never heard it clearly before. It had the cadence of his own thoughts when he spoke his name to himself. He did not move toward the doorway. He did not reach for the knob. The voice waited. "You left the door open," it said after a short pause. "Could you hold it for me?" He looked. The copy room door stood half open. The hallway beyond it was a strip of dim light and shadow. At the far end, the stairwell door was just out of view. The little ticket in his pocket, the one that had ridden there for days, seemed to press outward. He could feel its edges through the fabric like a tongue of cardboard. Hold the door. The warning on the page in his other hand weighed just as much. Do not greet. Do not hold. Do not return. He realized then that the messages had never told him to run. They had only told him what not to do. He backed away from the copy room door, step by slow step, until his back hit the far wall. The cinder block there was cold, almost damp. The old evacuation poster beside him hung crooked again, as if someone had brushed past it from within the wall. The footsteps in the hall resumed, very slow. One step, then another. He could not see the owner. The situation had been arranged perfectly for that. The angle of the doorway, the recessed placement of the copy room, the way the hall bent. He saw only a changing shadow as whenever it was moved closer. His hand slipped along the wall until it met the light switch. He flipped it. The room lights did not change. The machine's panel dimmed, then brightened, as if it were trying to compensate. The fan sped up, then slowed. The footsteps stopped right outside the copy room threshold. He saw the shadow lengthen on the floor, a vague outline where light bent around something not quite solid. "Hey," the voice said. Closer now, almost companionable. "You there?" His throat worked. No sound came out. The air at the bottom of the door cooled another notch. His breath clouded when he exhaled. The shadow on the floor shifted, as if the unseen figure had leaned in. "You're holding me up," it said softly. "You always do this." The familiarity in that phrase struck him harder than anything else. A petty complaint, the kind a coworker might make if he lingered at the printer. Just that tiny note of worn patience. He shut his eyes. The inside of his lids glowed faintly with the overhead spill. "Please," the voice said, "just this once. Hold the door." His mind skittered around the edges of the words. Just this once. As if there had been other times, in other corridors, with other doors. He opened his eyes. The copy room door stood exactly as it had. Half open, neither welcoming nor refusing. The shadow on the floor had crept a little farther in, a darker smudge on the tile. He stepped sideways and grabbed the door, not to open it wider, but to push it slowly closed. The hinges squealed a little. The air resistance on the other side of the door felt heavier than it should have, as if he were pushing through a thick curtain rather than empty space. The voice did not raise itself. It did not plead. It just fell quieter. "Mark," it said, words pressed thin by the narrowing gap. "You do not have to be rude." The latch touched the strike plate and clicked. Everything in the hallway stopped. The shadow on the floor vanished. Sound drained out of the space. The overhead fixtures hummed at their usual volume again, nothing more. The temperature in the room rose half a degree, enough that his breath no longer showed. Behind the door, the stairwell settled back into whatever shape it had always held. If there were footsteps retreating, he did not hear them. The machine in the corner beeped once. The panel went back to its home screen. Copies, scan, fax. A final page slid out. The sheet was blank when he picked it up. He tilted it under the fluorescent light, looking for the ghost of toner. Nothing. Smooth white from edge to edge. He turned it over. The backside was the same. Only when he watched it longer did the faintest outline of letters begin to rise, as if heat from his hand were teasing them out of invisible ink. A few strokes first, then more. One word at the center of the page. Return. He dropped it. The paper fluttered down to the tile face-up. The letters faded again, leaving nothing behind but a faint gray shadow of where they had been. He left the room without picking it up. He locked his drawer, took his bag, walked down the stairs on the far side of the building, and went home. After that, the machine behaved. No more unknown jobs. No more maps of non-existent hallways. The panel showed only the usual menu. The feeder took originals and spit out copies. The stapler clicked when it had a bundle of paper under it, not empty air. The safety advisories from management slowed, then stopped. People adjusted to the new door rules. The guard at the lobby rotated. A few offices changed hands. A couple of desks stayed empty longer than they should have, waiting for new hires who never quite materialized. On his next visit to the basement office, Ron told him the vendor had pushed a firmware update to the copiers. Some minor bug had been found in the job queue process, something about phantom entries created under low power conditions. It had been resolved. Glitch, Ron said. These things happen. Probably nothing. Mark nodded, as if that answer satisfied him. He still avoided the back corridor when he could. When he had to walk it, He kept his eyes on the evacuation poster instead of the blank wall beside it. Sometimes he thought he felt a faint draft there, a thin thread of cool air sliding along the block, but when he pressed his palm to the paint, it was warm. He stopped carrying the old printed pages. One by one, he fed them into the shredding bin, even the map, even the mirrored badge image, even the tickets. He did that without ceremony, in silence, and watched the blades chew the paper into narrow strips. He did not shred the blank page. He found it when he was cleaning out his bag one weekend. It had folded itself around the other papers somehow, riding along unseen. He recognized it by the slight smudge at the center where the word had appeared. He stood at his kitchen counter with it in his hands and looked at its smooth surface. If there was latent ink there, it did not rise. If letters hid in the fibers, they stayed hidden. He slid it into the drawer with his utility bills and left it there. He went on working. He woke the machine each evening, ran the jobs, stacked the packets. The smell of hot dust and toner wrapped itself around him the way it always had. Life shrank to the familiar radius of his desk, his car, his apartment. The dread that had built over those weeks flattened into a memory he held at the edge of his thoughts, never quite letting himself look at it directly. Every once in a while, though, deep into the night, his phone would buzz once on the counter with no call logged, no message. Just that brief tremor against the wood. On those nights, the image would rise in his mind without his consent. A narrow hallway along a rear wall, lit by a string of buzzing fixtures. A door standing slightly open at the far end. A pressure behind it, patient and steady, waiting for someone to do something as small and simple as hold it open and say hello. He would stand there in his dim kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum and the distant rush of cars on the main road, and feel the echo of cool air along his ankles, as if some draft were still searching for a way through a wall that, in this building, had never had a door.